Today I'm here with Drew Hall, who's the CFO of Genflat. Genflat is a revolutionary container shipping company that's created a container to solve a huge issue in the container space, which is how much space containers take up. So they have a collapsible container. So how did Genflat come to be?
In 2005, I ran into a fellow by the name of Roy Heron, and Roy lived in Long Beach, California, and had served for 2 terms as the executive director of the Long Beach port. Roy and I became friends, and then in 2017, Roy introduced me to another individual, Alex Belhumeur, who had also served as a member of the Long Beach Port Commission. Alex is an inventor, and both he and Roy were familiar with the issues of empty containers, both the movement of empty containers and storage of empty containers at the ports. And so Alex came up with the original concept and the engineering and the patents for the collapsible container and the actuator, which is the device that's used to expand and collapse the container. So Roy and Alex both were retired. So this was a project that they had dreamed about but had never done. So Roy said, Drew, I need you to fund this company and build the containers and build the company. So we started engineering in 2017, and in 2019, we completed the original alpha prototype of the collapsible container and the actuator in Long Beach. And we had previously entered into a manufacturing agreement with China International Marine Containers. Most people refer to them by the acronym CIMC. They're the largest container manufacturer in the world. So we took our engineering plans and gave them to CIMC, and that was in January of 2020. And then, unfortunately, COVID hit.
Obviously, precarious timing there. Well, I love the story there where a couple guys have an idea and say, hey Drew, we need you to raise money for this and get it going. But we appreciate everything.
Yeah,
no, that's great. So, all right. Well, obviously, starting in January 2020 in China is not the best timing. But how did things kind of progress from there?
Well, so essentially, we were put on hold for 2 years. I mean, we were dead in the water because the China CIMC only had engineers that were allowed to come to the factory, so we really couldn't move forward. But in December of 2022, CIMC then built the 4 what we call beta prototypes of the collapsible containers, and those containers were tested. A container, in order to be certified as a marine shipping container, has to pass 16 ISO tests. And at the manufacturing site in Dalian, China, Lloyd's Registry has a testing facility. So each container as it comes off the manufacturing line gets tested for horizontal, vertical stresses, and waterproof. So our containers passed those tests. And so then we had CIMC expand, collapse many times. And then we shipped those containers to Long Beach, took them to a container yard, and we made the marketing video in April.
Speaking of video, I have it pulled up here.
Collapsible shipping container, clearing the way for cost savings, better space utilization, and carbon emission reduction. Maximizing efficiency, minimizing cost. Genflat is the answer. Manufactured by CIMC, tough, durable, and built to last. Our containers are ISO tested and certified. Genflat is the gold standard collapsible shipping container. Compatible and compliant with standard terminal handling equipment, Genflat containers collapse in 80 seconds flat. Stack 4 into the same space as a high cube shipping container, ready for multimodal transport. founded by former port commissioners who witnessed the inefficiency of empty container stacking and storage, Genflat delivers. For your bottom line, reducing repositioning costs. For ports, freeing up 75% of land now used for empty container storage. For sustainability, fewer transportation moves results in lower emissions. The Genflat container is the competitive advantage you need. Available now for purchase or lease. Genflat is next generation shipping technology. Stack 'em, ship 'em, problem solved. Genflat is your answer.
80 seconds is pretty fast. It's a great video, and congratulations on the award. What was the event in Dubai?
That was a shipping marine conference, an annual conference. And frankly, when we made the video, we posted it on LinkedIn and it went viral, and they contacted us and said, we have nominated you to receive the award for the most inspiring new technology in the shipping marine industry, and we want you to come here to the conference. So we went back to Dubai, and lo and behold, we won. So it was really a pretty special thing for us, and that's really introduced us to some markets that frankly we weren't necessarily focused on. For example, in the Middle East, they have a significant container traffic, and of course, every container that leaves the Middle East leaves empty because they export one thing, and you can probably guess what that is.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's a huge market for us, and we're planning a trip to the Middle East probably in September. We already have some contacts with some companies there and with some ports. So we think will be a significant market for us.
Yeah. So in the U.S., I feel like a lot of the containers get shipped back on a backhaul to Asia, just kind of empty. I know we ship some, cowhides and other things, but obviously the main exports are coming from China to the U.S. and obviously the Mideast exports a lot of crude and not as much electronics and other things that go in containers. So, how's the whole logistics kind of footprint of everything work? Are you guys going to have to spend a lot of time shipping empty containers around to get them to different places? Obviously, I assume they can just, stack these on vessels and ship them empty, but, maybe just give us a quick run through of how that all will work, or at least how you guys envision it working.
Sure. Yeah. And where our container provides a significant benefit, both from a financial standpoint and an environmental standpoint, is in the repositioning of the empty container. Let's use an example. We build our containers in China, so they originally come here laden with some kind of product. Walmart, Amazon, Caterpillar, everybody ships stuff from Asia, not necessarily China, but various places. So when that container comes, it comes laden with materials. It arrives at a port. We'll use Long Beach as an example. That container, once it's at that port, there's really only two ways to move that container outside of just moving it internally in the port. And one is by truck and the other is by rail. So let's take containers get put two on a rail car and they go inland. Let's say they go to a distribution center. We'll use Juliet as an example, which is just in the Chicago area. Once they're there, they're empty. Now you have an empty container. And standard containers then go back on the rail car, two containers on a rail car, and come back to the port empty. Then when they get to the port, they take up an enormous amount of space at the port, empty containers do, before they're then put back into a ship and then taken back to Asia. And then the process repeats itself. So really, from the time that container, the laden container, is emptied, you're shipping air, which really doesn't make a lot of sense. And so what you can do now, using the rail example, is at that Juliet yard, we have the actuator there. We can now collapse those containers, and now we can put 8 containers in a rail car instead of 2. So it saves 75% of the repositioning cost from that Juliet container yard back to Long Beach. Now it improves the port's operations because now those 8 stacked containers take up only the same room as 2 empty standard containers. And now they go back into the ship and you have the same advantage. Now you have a 75% reduction in the repositioning cost of that container back to wherever the manufacturer, wherever the laden goods then come back again. So the logistics are that we reduce your repositioning cost by 75% fundamentally. Same with a truck. If a truck goes out to Bakersfield from the port in Long Beach, they can have 4 of those containers go out with laden materials. Then you collapse them and 1 truck can bring those 4 containers back. So you take 3 trucks off the road. So it's fundamentally a 75% reduction in the repositioning cost, and also very important, it's 75% reduction in the carbon footprint because you've removed trucks off the road and you've now reduced the rail impact. So that's the sort of, and what we do is we work with companies and we learn about their logistics. Where do your containers go? And now where do we have to position the actuators? And then once we have that, then we demonstrate to the company, whether it's a leasing company or a shipping company or a BCO, of the financial and environmental benefits of switching to Genflat containers.
Yeah. So do a lot of when a new container is created in Asia, do most of those make it back to Asia to carry more stuff, or do a lot of them come to the U.S. and then just kind of stay here doing other things?
The ratio is basically 5 to 1. For every 5 containers going back to China, there's 1 that's laden. The other 4 are empty.
But just in terms of the life of a container, if 100 containers are made in China and carry stuff to America, do kind of all 100 of those make it back to China at some point, or is it almost just cheaper to continue to build new containers versus kind of shipping them back under the way things kind of operate now?
Yeah, under normal conditions, the container will make its way back empty and be reused. Most standard containers have a useful life in order to be certified as a marine shipping container of about 8 to 10 years. And at that point in time, a lot of them are sold off, and you see them in various places in industrial yards. And if you drive through your rural areas, you'll see farmers have containers on their property using to store various things. Right. Our containers have the same useful life as a standard container. But on a normal operation, that container from Asia to the US and back to Asia will make about 4.5 round trips per year. Now, obviously, during the COVID period, all of those logistics got turned upside down. So we're now moving back. The shipping industry is now moving back to a more, quote, normal operation that they experienced prior to COVID. So here's something that's really, really important to understand. One of the advantages of our container is if that container makes 4.5 round trips, it's only being collapsed or expanded 9 times. So if you take 9 times 80 seconds, you come up with 720 seconds. That's basically 12 minutes. So for 350 or 363 days, 23 hours and 48 minutes, our container is just like any other container.
Right. Yeah. 12
only
minutes.
12 minutes out of the year is it being expanded or collapsed, but it has an enormous impact on the cost of repositioning the container and on the environmental impact of the shipping industry. So that's the benefit.
Yeah. And obviously, how is the kind of competition in this sector? Collapsing containers, it's a great idea, and I'm surprised it's not more widespread in the industry, but obviously it's not, perhaps, and no offense, but not the most groundbreaking idea that, hey, we could make these containers smaller and we could ship a lot more of them. So, what have been some of the hurdles and some of the things you guys are working through to, adapt this more broadly in the industry?
Yeah, one of the questions I'm often asked when somebody sees the videos, they say, why hasn't somebody thought of this before?
Right. Yeah, exactly.
And what I tell them is the wheel was invented in Mesopotamia about 5500 AD. But I carried luggage through airports for half my lifetime before somebody thought of putting wheels on luggage. So nobody came up with this concept. There are now really a couple of other companies that have collapsible containers. We have advantages in that our containers are more durable, they're more solidly built, they take much less time to collapse and expand, they use less labor. Our company is very sound financially. We have no debt. All of our costs to date have been from equity funding, so we have no debt. So we have some significant advantage over those other competitors. There are a couple of companies that are trying to penetrate the market. But to be frank, it's not an industry that's known for innovation. It's pretty much the way it has, and nobody is really worried. But there are problems now. Part of those problems have been exacerbated or accentuated because of COVID. And one of the problems, for example, is the storage of the empty containers at the ports, because the Long Beach port and the LA port are landlocked. They don't have any more room. And clearly somewhere between 35 to 40% of the surface area of the ports is taken up by these empty containers. So it's a huge cost to the ports. So our container has advantages not only for the owner or leaser of the containers, but also for the ports as well. And we're getting a lot of support from the ports, the interest throughout the world, and some of the ports have talked about coming up with a decarbonization credit that they would use to offset the port fees, wharfage, demurrage, et cetera, that shipping companies pay. That may be an important component. We're excited about the possibility of those types of credits.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. Yeah, I remember during, when LA Long Beach was kind of at its worst, and the CEO of Flexport, Ryan Peterson, was kind of going around on a boat showing people, some of the issues. And one of the things that they identified pretty quickly was, well, there's local ordinances here that say, containers can only be stacked too high. And because of that, they had nowhere to put all the boxes. And so
right.
And that was causing massive delays. And I think even that one issue probably had a maybe not the lion's share, but that definitely really drove a lot of the delays, was just finding places for the boxes. And so, if you can alleviate some of that issue, hopefully we don't go through something like that again. But when you saw just the absolute carnage that some relatively small issues were causing, it really starts makes you think a little bit. So no, that's super interesting. So then roughly how much more does one of your boxes cost than a regular way? Is there any real hurdles for people to buy yours? I know that the container leasing companies are obviously very well funded and capitalized and whatnot. What's kind of the economics of using your technology and your product?
Yeah, and first of all, our containers cost about 4 times the cost of a standard container, so that's an issue. However, we have an algorithm that we use that shows what the financial impacts of our containers are versus the use of standard containers. So, giving you an example, we just recently did that for a company in the Middle East, and our container paid for itself in 9 months. We've done some of those algorithms for companies in the U.S., and it pays for itself in about 12 to 13 months. So if you take a standard container, you could go today, and the prices will vary based on the supply and demand and also the cost of steel. We use Corten steel for our containers, which is what's used for the standard containers. But you could go buy a standard container today, call it $5,000. We sell our containers for $22,000. So, but our container saves you about $16,500 per year U.S. And in the case of the Saudi logistics, it saved over $27,000 in a year. So it's essentially the container pays for itself. And again, the useful life is the same as any other container. So, and we provide both leasing options and financing for the acquisition of our containers. So we're just now beginning to discussions with a variety of companies, and so that's all being kind of worked out. But yeah, it's more expensive than a standard container, but it's worth a lot more.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, you don't have to be a math genius to know that if it only costs a few more and you make it back in 1 year and it's got an 8 or 10 year useful life, sounds like a good investment. Although, are the economic interests aligned in the container industry from who's paying for drayage or demurrage costs and whatnot, or does the liner save on one side and the shipper say how are the economics kind of appropriated so that people are realizing those savings?
Yeah, well, and again, candidly, we'll appeal to a niche market. The logistics have to work, but we're getting great acceptance, to be frank with you. So I think there will be a little bit of reluctance because people will have some concerns about what are the maintenance costs and is the useful life and the durability of the container really what you're alleging it is. And we're very confident of that because we worked very hard to make sure we built this so that it's durable and strong and will perform. And so I think it's going to happen is it's going to receive limited acceptance initially in the marketplace, and that's okay with us. If you start small and you have a problem, then it's a small problem. So
exactly.
But once those containers are operational, and CIMC is currently manufacturing our first 100 containers, so probably in October, November, we'll have those containers in operation. Once we see those containers and in use, and we get the testimonies from the owners of the containers, whether they're leasing or shipping line companies, I think then we're going to have a hard time keeping up with the demand.
Yeah, no, that's and so CIMC, obviously they're a huge container builder, if that's the right term to use. But so you pretty much have pretty good economies of scale in terms of that initial run, or
yes.
Is there potential for kind of some cost savings as you guys get bigger? It sounds like working with that group, you
yes.
pretty much have the inside track.
Yeah, these initial containers are a little bit more expensive. As we scale to manufacturing, and our goal is to get to 5,000 containers a month rather quickly, then the manufacturing costs will come down. We already know that. We have a great working relationship with CIMC. They've been just terrific. They've treated us like family. And so we anticipate that will come down. And then our price, we hope, comes down a little bit, which will then add even greater benefits. But if you buy our container and you own it for 8 years and you operate it in a normal way, that container is going to return about $160,000 to you over a standard container. So that's a pretty good investment.
Yeah, no, so what's kind of the plan for this fall? Obviously, you got to get these 100 out the door. I assume you're having conversations with a lot of the operating and liner companies. I mean, are you seeing any inbound interest from those groups, or are they looking at some of this stuff on their own, or what's the forecast here for the rest of the year?
Yeah, our calendar is very full with some trips again to the Middle East and to China. Obviously, there's a big market in China as well. They have repositioning problems just like we do. We're working also with an advisor. Eventually, we'll do a direct listing. We're looking forward to that. That we think will give us greater awareness and assist us as we grow with debt and equity financing. So this advisor we've retained, again, we will be sometime in the near term, probably within the next 4 or 5 months, doing a direct listing and becoming a public company. And we think that will add capital capacity for us to grow so that we can take advantage of the demand.
Yeah, no, that's obviously having a public entity is always helpful because you have to file your financial reports and people can see those, and it provides a little bit more exposure and comfort, I think, with the investor base. So that'll be super exciting.
Yeah. I mean, I was an auditor for 4 years and audited public companies, so I'm fairly familiar with the demands and the rigor of being a public company. But there's an advantage to that, and that is if you comply and do it the way it's supposed to be done, it gives great transparency to your operation and adds to the investor confidence in your company.
Well, it sounds like a great, very interesting opportunity where you can kill a couple of birds with one stone, so to speak. Saving space and saving money. So, and potentially adding some benefit to the environment as well. So, Drew, I really appreciate you taking some time to connect with us, and hopefully you guys will have some more viral videos come out. Look forward to watching those and keeping people, apprised of y'all's progress as this first run comes out, and hopefully we start seeing. I always drive through Newark, New Jersey on the way to the airport from New York here, and you obviously see containers everywhere, and hopefully we'll start seeing some nice flat ones laying there, and we'll say we know a little bit about that.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity to have a discussion with you, and yes, that's our goal, and we're pretty determined. So expect to see that sometime in the near future.
Awesome. Well, thank you.
Thank you.